We're all taught to be afraid of strangers. The monster under the bed, the shadow in a dark alley. But what happens when the monster is sleeping in the bed next to you? What if the person you trust with your life becomes the very threat you should have been running from all along? The most bone-chilling horror doesn't come from ghosts or demons. It comes from the realization that the people we think we know best can be the most terrifying strangers of all. These are 5 stories, submitted as true, about the dark side of people we trust. These are tales of friends, classmates, and co-workers whose masks slipped just for a second to reveal something monstrous underneath. Story 1. The Classmate. My childhood was pretty idyllic. I grew up in a quiet suburb where kids played outside until the streetlights came on, and the biggest danger was scraping your knee. It was in this seemingly safe world that I met William. We were in the same 3rd grade class, and he was, by all accounts, a normal kid. He was funny, charismatic, and everyone wanted to be his friend. Looking back, I can see our friendship was always on his terms. He decided the games, he decided who was in our group and who was out. His approval was everything, and for a while, I was his best friend. But the first cracks in his friendly facade were small. It started with a quiet, nasty kind of bullying that he saved just for me. In public, he was my best pal. In private, a different William came out. He'd accidentally trip me and laugh it off. He'd borrow my toys, and they'd turn up broken a week later, always with a perfect excuse. He had this way of twisting things, making me feel like I was the one who was too sensitive. He was my friend, I told myself. This is just what boys do. His abuse was like a slow poison. It was so subtle that if I'd tried to tell my parents, I would have sounded like I was overreacting. How do you explain the cold look in a friend's eye after he shoves you just a little too hard? I was an 8-year-old kid who just wanted to fit in. So I kept his secrets. I convinced myself the good William, the one everyone else saw, was the real one. The day it all changed was a bright, sunny afternoon at recess. William dared me to climb to the very top of the old metal jungle gym, a rusty behemoth that seemed to touch the sky. It was a public dare, delivered with a charming smile in front of all our friends. Refusing wasn't an option. My heart was hammering, but I needed his approval more than I was scared. I started climbing. The bars were hot from the sun, and my palms were sweating. When I finally made it to the top, I looked down and felt a rush of pride. I'd done it. I looked at William, expecting a grin or a thumbs up. Instead, his face was cold and focused. In his hand was a rock, not a pebble, but a jagged stone the size of his fist. Our eyes met, and for a split second, I saw no friendship, no game. Just a terrifying, empty malice. I didn't even have time to scream. The rock hit the side of my head with a sickening crack. I exploded in white-hot pain. My grip went slack, and I fell. I don't remember the fall, just hitting the wood chips, the impact jarring every bone in my body. My next memory is lying there, the playground a blurry, tilted mess. The pain was blinding, and I could feel something warm and wet trickling down my face. I tried to call for help, but my mouth wouldn't work. I could see William just standing a few feet away, not running for a teacher, not rushing to help. He was just watching me. I later learned from doctors that he waited almost an hour before getting a teacher. An hour while I was lying there with multiple skull fractures and internal bleeding. They said he was likely hoping I would just stop breathing. The recovery was brutal and left me with disabilities I still deal with today, but the psychological scars were deeper. For years, William told everyone I had just fallen. Our friends, my teachers, even my parents believed him. Why wouldn't they? He was such a good kid. The truth only came out years later, after he'd tormented other kids and people finally started to see the pattern. The horror of that day wasn't just the violence. It was the betrayal. It's knowing that someone I called my best friend was capable of such a cold, calculated act. He taught me a lesson that has stayed with me forever. The most dangerous monsters are the ones who stand right beside you, smiling, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Story 2. The Coworker. The modern office is a weird place. You spend 40 hours a week with people you didn't choose, sharing deadlines and stale coffee. You learn their spouse's name, their kid's soccer schedule. It's a forced intimacy that makes you think you know them. I worked at a standard mid-sized marketing firm. Beige cubicles, fluorescent lights. You know the vibe. And it was there that the most terrifying period of my life began, not with a bang, but with a dial tone. It started on a Tuesday night. My husband Tom and I were watching a movie with our 2 young kids. The landline rang. I answered, expecting a telemarketer. Nothing, just dead, empty silence. I said hello again, then hung up. An hour later, it rang again. Same thing. It happened 4 more times before we finally unplugged the phone. The next day, the calls started on my cell. Blocked number. This time there was a voice, a man's voice, distorted and low. "Did Sarah enjoy her piano lesson today?" It rasped. My blood ran cold. Sarah was my daughter. Her piano lesson was every Wednesday at 4 p.m. How could anyone know that? I hung up, trembling. The calls became a daily torment. The voice knew impossible things. It would mention the color of the shirt I was wearing when I was home alone. It commented on an argument Tom and I had in our kitchen, quoting us. The feeling of being watched was suffocating. We were living in a glass house. We called the police. They were sympathetic, but without a direct threat. Their hands were tied. "Probably just a prankster," the officer said. "A prankster? A prankster doesn't know my son had a nightmare about a clown at 2 a.m. A prankster doesn't play back a recording of me humming while I did the dishes." The paranoia started to eat us alive. We swept for bugs, checked our cars for trackers, and changed every password. We covered our webcams and started talking in whispers. The stalker seemed to love our fear. The calls would come right after a private conversation, proving he was listening in real time. One night, Tom and I were quietly stressing about money. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. "Money's tight, isn't it?" the voice crooned. The worst call came a week later. I was putting the kids to bed. My cell, which I'd left downstairs, started ringing. Tom answered. I saw his face drain of all color as he sprinted up the stairs and burst into my son Michael's room. "Get away from the window," he mouthed, his eyes wide with panic. Later, he told me what the voice said. It had described in perfect detail the dinosaur pajamas Michael was wearing. "Such a cute little boy," the voice had said. "He looks so peaceful when he's sleeping. It would be a shame if something woke him up." That was it. The police finally took us seriously. A tech specialist ran a full diagnostic. The discovery was horrifying. He hadn't planted bugs. He had hacked our phone lines. The specialist explained that with his level of skill, he could remotely activate our cell phone microphones, turning our own devices into listening posts. He was in our pockets, on our nightstands. He was everywhere. The police traced the hack back to a server routed through several countries, but the lead detective had a hunch. "This is someone you know," he said. "Someone who has a reason to fixate on you." He asked for a list of everyone in our lives. The answer came from the tech specialist. While analyzing the malware, he found a digital fingerprint, a unique piece of code. It was linked to a programmer who'd been fired from a tech company a year prior for corporate espionage and stalking. His name was David. When the police showed me his photo, my stomach dropped. David was a quiet guy from the IT department at my firm. We weren't close, but we were friendly. I'd told him about my kids, our vacation plans. I had unknowingly fed him the details he was now using to terrorize us. He'd been fired from my firm a few months before the call started. Now I knew why. He had fixated on me, and when he lost his job, his obsession spiraled. The police arrested him. They found servers, hacking equipment, and folders full of audio files of our most private moments, all cataloged and dated. The horror wasn't just the violation, it was the casual, friendly face behind it. The guy I'd nod to in the hallway was secretly the monster who haunted our nights. He taught me you don't have to let someone into your house for them to invade your life. Sometimes you hand them the key without even knowing. If these stories are sending a chill down your spine, you should probably subscribe and hit the notification bell. You don't want to miss what's coming next. The people in these stories learned the hard way that trust can be a dangerous thing, and we have 3 more chilling examples to share with you. Story 3. The roommate. Finding a good roommate is like winning the lottery. You're trusting a stranger with your home and your peace of mind. When I first met Kieran, I thought I'd hit the jackpot. He was a fellow university student, laid back and seemed perfect. We moved into a 2-bedroom apartment near campus, and for the first month, things were great. We respected each other's space, shared chores. I thought I knew him. I was wrong. It started small. A splash of my milk, a handful of my chips. I let it go. I didn't want to be that roommate who labels their food. But then, entire meals I'd prepped for the week would vanish. He'd just flash a smile and say, "Oh, my bad, dude. I was starving. I'll get you back." He never did. Then he started borrowing my stuff. My favorite hoodie would show up on his chair, smelling like his cologne. My video games would be moved. It felt like he saw the entire apartment and everything in it as his. My room was my only sanctuary, and I started locking the door, which felt ridiculous but necessary. The real unease began when he started showing up everywhere. He knew my class schedule, but suddenly he was at the coffee shop where I studied, or on the same floor of the library. "Fancy seeing you here," he'd say, but it was happening too often to be a coincidence. The locked door to my room became a challenge for him. One evening, I came home to find my bedroom door slightly ajar. I knew I had locked it. I pushed it open, heart pounding. My laptop, which I had left closed, was open. The little power light was on. He had picked the lock. He had been in my room, going through my things. I confronted him that night. "Kieran, have you been in my room?" I asked, trying to stay calm. He looked up from his phone with this look of perfect innocence. "What? No, man. Why would I go in your room?" He was so convincing I almost doubted myself. He was an expert at gaslighting, making me feel like I was the one being weird. The situation peaked a few weeks later. I had a big exam and told Kieran I was pulling an all-nighter at the library. I left around 8 p.m., but the library was packed, so I decided to just head home and study with headphones. I got back around 9. The apartment was dark. I figured Kieran was out or asleep. As I crept down the hallway, I noticed the bathroom light was on under the door. I got to my room, unlocked it, and locked it again behind me out of habit. I put on my headphones and started studying. About an hour later, I heard a sound that froze my blood. A faint, rhythmic creak of the floorboards right outside my door. Creak. Pause. Creak. Pause. Someone was pacing out there. I ripped my headphones off. The pacing stopped. Then, I heard the soft jiggle of my doorknob. Someone was trying to open my door. "Kieran?" I called out. Silence. The doorknob jiggled again, more forcefully. My mind was racing. Was it a burglar? But the front door had been locked. It had to be Kieran. Why was he trying to get into my room at 10 p.m. thinking I wasn't home? I backed away, whispering into my phone to campus security. Then I heard a new sound. A low, guttural breathing from the other side of the door. It wasn't angry. It was the sound of someone listening. Campus security arrived in what felt like an eternity. The hallway was empty. The bathroom light was off. Kieran was gone. It was only when an officer checked the bathroom that the true horror became clear. On the floor, behind the toilet, was a small pile of things. An empty chip bag, a water bottle, and a small foldable camping stool. Kieran hadn't been in the shower. He had been in the bathroom with the lights on, waiting. He had seen me come home. He wasn't trying to get in because he thought I was out. He was trying to get in because he knew I was in there. The officer figured he'd been waiting for me to go to sleep. The thought of what might have happened if I hadn't locked my door still makes me sick. I never saw Kieran again. I packed a bag that night and moved out the next day. A home is supposed to be your sanctuary. Kieran taught me that sometimes the most terrifying threats are the ones you've already let inside. Story 4. The Online Friend. Back when MySpace was the thing, it felt like my escape from the awkwardness of high school. It's where I met Sarah. Her profile was a collage of the same obscure bands and indie films I loved. Our first few messages turned into daily conversations. We were inseparable, at least online. Sarah was my digital best friend. We talked about everything. She just got me in a way my real-life friends didn't. She said she lived a few towns over, and we always talked about meeting up. But something always came up. Her parents were strict, she was grounded. There was always a plausible excuse. And I believed her. Why wouldn't I? She was my friend. Our friendship deepened over a year, but tiny inconsistencies started to pop up. She claimed to go to a high school in a completely different district from where she said she lived. When I mentioned it, she had a quick answer about a special arts program. It was a seamless save, and I let it go. Then she started talking about shared experiences that never happened. "Remember how amazing that concert was last month?" She'd message. But I knew for a fact the band hadn't played in our state that year. She'd get defensive. "Oh, right. That was the show in the next state over. My cousin drove me." Her stories were detailed, but they were starting to feel fragile. The biggest red flag came when we talked about a local park. I mentioned going there as a kid. "Oh my God, me too," she replied instantly. But when I asked her a specific question about the little ice cream stand near the entrance, she'd skillfully changed the subject. It was like talking to an AI that had scraped general information but had no actual experience of being there. She was a mirror, reflecting my own experiences back at me to create this fake connection. That doubt grew into a desperate need for the truth. I did a reverse image search on her profile pictures. Nothing. Her friends list looked like it was full of shell accounts. The confrontation wasn't some dramatic explosion. It was quiet and chilling. I decided to set a trap. I made up a story about a fake local music festival happening that weekend, complete with fake band names. "You should totally come," I messaged her. "We could find..." Story 5. The cousin family is supposed to be your bedrock. The people who are just there from the beginning. My cousin Mark was one of those people. He was a few years older, and we grew up more like siblings. He taught me how to ride a bike. He introduced me to good music. He always had my back. His laugh was the soundtrack of my childhood. Then, one day, that soundtrack just stopped. Mark was murdered when he was 22. The police said it was mistaken identity during a robbery gone wrong. A life full of promise, just extinguished for nothing. For me, it was like a part of my own history had been violently ripped away. The dreams started about a month after the funeral. At first, they were comforting. I'd dream he was still alive and we were kids again. I'd wake up with that bittersweet ache, the joy of seeing him fading into the reality of his absence. I figured it was just my brain processing the grief. But then the dreams changed. They got more vivid, more urgent. I'd find myself in dark, unfamiliar places, a dimly lit alley, an abandoned warehouse. Mark would be there, but he wasn't the guy I remembered. He looked pale and anxious, his eyes filled with a desperate, pleading look. He never spoke. He would just gesture frantically, pointing at something in the shadows I could never quite see. I'd wake up with my heart racing, drenched in cold sweat, the dread clinging to me for hours. These dreams became a nightly exhaustion. I started to dread going to sleep. I knew it felt like more than grief. It felt like he was actively trying to tell me something, and it was agonizing. Years passed. I went to college, got a job, started a family. The dreams faded to an occasional ghostly echo. I thought I had finally moved on. The most terrifying dream happened when my son was about 3. We lay down for a nap together one sunny afternoon. As I drifted off, I was back in one of those dreamscapes. But this time, I was in my own house. It was dark and cold. Mark appeared at the end of the hallway, looking more solid and real than ever. His frantic energy was gone, replaced by a look of sheer terror. He wasn't looking at me. He was staring at something behind me. He raised a trembling hand and pointed. His mouth opened, and for the first time, he spoke. Just one word, a hoarse, strangled whisper that seemed to echo from a great distance. "Run." I woke up with a gasp. My son was sleeping peacefully beside me, but the dread from the dream was so real it felt like a physical presence in the room. I scooped my son into my arms, my heart hammering. I didn't know what I was running from, but my cousin's warning was screaming in my soul. The chilling resolution came years later. I was helping my aunt clean out her attic. In one box, I found Mark's old journal. The last few entries written in the weeks before his death were frantic. He wrote about a guy he knew from the local music scene, a guy with a bad reputation. Mark had apparently witnessed something he shouldn't have, a deal gone wrong. He wrote about feeling like he was being followed, about getting strange, silent phone calls. He was scared. Reading his words, A new, horrifying picture formed. His death might not have been a random act at all. It might have been a deliberate silencing. And that's when the true horror of the dreams hit me. They weren't just my grief. They were a warning. For all those years, some part of me, some part that held his memory, had been trying to tell me there was more to his story, that there was a danger that hadn't died with him. The people we know, and the things they knew, can continue to terrify us long after they're gone. The people in these stories weren't monsters from a movie. They were friends, co-workers, and cousins. Their horror lies not in fangs or claws, but in the devastating breach of trust. It's a chilling reminder that sometimes the most dangerous threats aren't outside, but are hiding in plain sight, smiling at us from across the office or the dinner table. Have you ever had a chilling realization about someone you thought you knew? Seen the mask slip and been terrified by what was underneath? Share your story in the comments. We read every one. And if you found yourself looking over your shoulder, be sure to like and subscribe for more true stories that remind us to question how well we really know anyone at all.